Okay, I'd like to start out with a few general questions about your background. For instance, your name.
Well, my name is Hugh Victor Brown,
Okay, and what year were you born?
1891,
Okay, what was the date of that?
June the 20th.
Okay. How long have you lived in Wayne County?
Well, since 1924, I have to add that I worked for 34 years when I've been out since 58.
Okay. And where do you live now?
I live at 506 East Bunch Drive, Goldsboro.
Okay. All right. So we can start the question. What was it like growing up in Wayne County?
Well, I didn't grow up in Wayne County.
Oh, you didn't? Where'd you grow
No,
up?
I grew up in Henderson, Kentucky, where I was born. And I came to Goldsboro in Wayne County in 1924. So at first, to answer that first question, what was it like growing up in Goldsboro, Wayne County, really is negative because I didn't grow up in Wayne County.
Well, can you tell us what was it like growing up in Kentucky?
Well, I imagined as far as blacks concerned, probably the same way. We were not too many decades away from the Civil War. My father and mother were born slaves, and my mother was born in '59. My father was born, I think it was 45, I think, somewhere thereabouts. The war hadn't started, and my mother was born. The war had ended. 1859, which ended in 1865.
Both of your parents were slaves, did you say?
Well, yes, we were born slaves. That's right. Yeah.
Really? Well, how was it like growing up during that time when blacks didn't have as much freedom?
Well, I didn't know much about it because I was about midway to 14 children that my mother bore. And the schools were required of everybody to have truant officers to keep in touch with the school and the families. And sometimes some boys who didn't want to go to school, might slip away and call it playing hooker.
Yeah.
Yeah. But,
were you the middle child of 14 children?
how's that?
Were you the middle child of 14
I was
children?
about the middle child. And there are 4 of us living. And I'm the oldest of those who are living.
Well, what was life like then?
What was life?
What was life like then?
Well, we took it as it came. I don't believe I ever went hungry. As soon as I was big enough to do a little work for white people, you always see that I had something to eat.
Yeah, I understand.
Yeah.
Well, your schooling. Can you tell me a little bit about your schooling?
I started school at 6 years old. A little frame building. There were about 3 or 4 teachers. And went to school with 6 or 8 months.
What did your curriculum consist of?
Reading, writing, arithmetic. That's about all then.
Well, what did you do in your free time? What did you do in your free time?
Well, I didn't have free time. I either worked or looking for work. I didn't have any free time. I noticed you have that question down here. And of course, as I grew older, when there were such things as Japophones, listen to that, and canned music, we would sometimes call it.
Well, what was transportation like? Would you do a lot of
mule
walking?
and buggy? Mule and buggy, if the parents had it. Of course, my father did a good bit of gardening and farming, because he worked at a brickyard, and in the summer and in the winter, at tobacco factories, and most of the transportation was by foot. Not very many people had a mule or a horse and buggy, and we did not have any. Father did have a mule that he used for plowing, but we didn't have any other transportation except our feet.
Yeah.
And barefooted at that until, I don't know just when I first had a pair of shoes, but that was about it.
Well, can you describe your house?
Well, we rented. We rented. I remember that the house that I first knew anything about. It was a brick house, kind of on the hillside. It had been a slave home at one time, and no free water, no running water, no inside toilets or anything like that. Just about what the average, practically every Negro was used to.
Okay, thank you. Okay, now could you go on again about what you did in your free time? I mean, what did you enjoy doing whenever you had free time?
Well, we used to play a little ball. You could find a ball, or you could buy a rubber ball, maybe for 10 or 15 cents.
How many brothers and sisters did you have?
How's that?
How many brothers and sisters did you have?
Two sisters older than one of them died, and I was 6 months old.
Oh, I'm sorry.
The other one lived up in I think she died in the 70s, 1970 something. And I had Chester, Julian, Sylvan, Tree, Norman, Ford, William. 5 brothers ahead of me. And I was the 9th boy.
Oh, really? Did you find it hard being in the middle? Did you find it hard being the middle child?
No, not necessarily so. We played together, and of course my older brothers got in the department. I personally knew them. They were men to me. One of them died at the age 21. He was superintendent of Sunday school at the time. The other one had already gone to Hampton Institute about 1900. I was 9 years old. No, it wasn't any problem to me at all for being the middle child.
Yeah. What jobs did you have?
Cutting grass or helping to wash windows, or, doing any work that a boy, both bubbling into teenage, was able to do. I worked for one family for 35 cents a week, and bored almost. And another person I worked for became the governor of the state, E.O. Stanley, and a senator. I did most any kind of work that a boy of that age could do. As I said, with cutting grass and breaking leaves and washing windows, sometimes peeling potatoes, pouring corn, and anything like that.
Well, as you grew up, what other jobs or what were your interests what were some of your interests as you grew up beyond a teenager? What other jobs did you hold?
Well, of course now, pretty soon I was able to go off to school, and I worked in the kitchen. And since my father had been sort of mini farmer, I signed up to take agriculture. So I had plenty of work to do on the farm at Hampton to keep me going.
Okay. What year did you come to Wayne County?
1924.
And when you came to Wayne County, were you already interested in education?
Yes. Yes, of course, I had in mind studying for the ministry, and I did go to school 1 year at Virginia Theological Seminary, but at that time I wasn't exactly sure just what to do. I would do whatever came to hand.
Mm-hmm. Okay. What school did you go to? Elementary and colleges?
Public school in Henderson until I was around 14, 15 years of age. And then, of course, let's say I went to Hampton Institute, a school that would make it possible for a boy to work his way through.
Mm-hmm.
Like Booker T. Washington's a good example of it.
Mm-hmm.
He walked to Hampton and he worked, and then when he finished, he founded Tuskegee.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, the school that I went was not a college at that time. They called it Institute, University now.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Well, and when you came to Wayne County, did you attend any school here? Any?
No, when I came to Wayne County, I came here as a principal and supervising principal of Dillard High School and the other 3 schools. That's way up in the 20s.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, and which school did you teach at?
Well, when I came here, I was the principal.
Mm-hmm.
I taught what they call Goldsboro High School,
Yes,
colored high school.
Uh-huh.
But I got the board to change that to Dillard.
Mm-hmm.
That old building is standing now.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, I had charge of the colored schools, East End, Greenleaf, and School Street.
You were principal.
I was principal, supervising.
Supervising principal.
Principal and principal.
Oh, so you had a kind of a load on your hands.
Kind of a superintendent's job in a way.
Yeah. Now, did you enjoy that job?
Oh, yes. And my wife was supervisor. She was elementary supervisor.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, I enjoyed it.
Okay. Since you were an early educator, could you share some of your experiences at school?
Well, as I said, when I came here as supervising principal and principal of the colored high school, I saw that word on the front, colored, and right away it struck me that it shouldn't be colored, but
just be high school.
It should be named for the man who had been the head of the school so long, Reverend Dillard. Mm-hmm. And I got the board to agree to call it Dillard High School.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And the other problem was extending the curriculum to be as high as a white high school.
Well, during your experiences at the school, did you find there was a lot of stumbling blocks or a lot of opposition to some things that you wanted to achieve?
Well, yes. When I was the first year I was here, the class, the highest class was in the 10th grade. They were graduating from the 10th grade. And that group was expecting to graduate that first year that I was here.
Mm-hmm.
But I'd gotten the board, the superintendent, to agree to not have any graduating class, but to hold them up to the 11th grade. Mm-hmm. Well, when I announced that to the class, it almost provoked a strike. Mm-hmm. And I remember some of them said, no, 11th grade for me. And but practically every one of them came back the next year for the 11th grade. Mm-hmm. And some folks who had been teaching on a 10th grade level came back to school in order to get at least a B certificate to teach. And some of them had children in school.
Mm-hmm. Well, any other experiences? I mean...
Well, there were Oh, lots of other things. And one of the happiest experiences was buying a bus and carrying the Glee Club to Washington to sing for Mrs. Roosevelt's garden party. And she gave us $100 for help on that trip.
So that must have been a
It
memorable.
was very, very, very happy. The man who was teaching music, I had a Christmas card from him, and I wrote him this past Christmas. And I mentioned it in one of our church meetings at Joy Van Hoy Collins had written me. And so some of the children were sitting right there. They were grown now. They asked me if I had his address. I said, yes, I have it. So I gave it to them, and one of the pupils who sang on that Glee Club is in the choir at First African Baptist Church now. And she said she'd heard from him twice since I mentioned him.
Really?
And in writing to me, he asked me what was my secret for long life. And I said, well, I don't have any. That's up to the Lord.
Yeah.
Of course, I'm in my 95th year. 95 in a couple of months. I'll be 95.
Your birthday is on June 20th. Your birthday's on June 20th?
June 20th.
It'll be 95?
95.
Well, that's really good, Professor Brown.
Well, I appreciate it. Yeah.
What kind of things when you were growing up, what was the frame of thought of people back then? I mean, were they happy, or were they like a lot of achievers?
You said, were they happy?
What was the kind of things that they thought? Like, for instance, during your lifespan, were people were they trying to achieve, or were they trying to get out of the way they grew up and try to go forward and progress?
Well, some did, and of course there was some that had no ambition at all, and many of them were just trying to get that little diploma out of the 10th grade and say that they had graduated. And as I say, we didn't have any graduating class that year at all, with the board's permission. And most of them, practically all of them, came back the next year. The first class then was 1926. And there's some of them living attend my church right now. Yeah, some of them.
Well, what church do you...
First African Baptist.
You attend First African Baptist?
That's right.
Okay, now what are some of the churches that you have been reverend of before?
I've always been a Baptist. I was baptized in a Baptist school in Henderson, Kentucky. That was way back in 1907, 1906 or 7. Thereabouts.
Well, have you ever had your own church in order to give sermons and things in?
Oh, I've preached a training, but I've never been a pastor. I've always been an associate or assistant. But I've never been a pastor. Also, Paul said that the Holy Spirit gave many gifts, some teachers, some ministers, and various ones, where it seemed that mine mostly was teaching.
Well, in what year did you become a reverend or a minister?
That was around 1915. I went to Union University for a year, and I applied for a license to preach in my church in Henderson, Kentucky.
So you achieved your ministry in Henderson, Kentucky?
I was licensed in Henderson, Kentucky.
Okay.
I was ordained in Goldsboro. After I came here, I was ordained at Mount Calvary Baptist Church right here in Goldsboro.
And what year was that?
Well, I don't have really a record, except I might have it in my diary somewhere, but it's somewhere in the 30s.
Was your family very religious?
Oh, yes, yes, indeed. My father was not a deacon, but he was outstanding church member, and my mother went to prayer meeting practically every Wednesday night. And I have one sister who stayed at home, my sister Annie, who writes for the local paper there. She was there with the passing of my father and later my mother and some of my older brothers and sisters. My oldest sister died about 1972.
Was is all of your family in Goldsboro, or some of them in Henderson,
Oh, they
Kentucky?
all left Goldsboro except this sister I'm talking about right now who's there. I hear from her. I wish I had brought that letter along. But we all got somewhere else. We sought greener pastures, so to speak. And out of those 6 or 8 boys, 4 of them became ministers. One brother preached 40 years. He died not too long, in somewhere in the 70s in New Jersey, and he's buried in New Jersey.
Okay. How important were the black churches to their community?
Very, very important, because right after slavery, the South didn't have any money. The South was distraught, and all of these schools, Winston-Salem, normal, Elizabeth City, normal, Fayetteville, normal, Goldsboro, normal, and all mentioned in this book, which I want you to give to Philip.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the second book I wrote, called it E-Qual-ity, Equal and Quality. That was the main thing we were striving for.
I'm sure this is a very interesting book. How were you personally, you and your family personally, affected by the war, the Civil War?
How's that again?
How are you and your family personally affected by the war?
By what, Civil War?
I mean, I'm sure it caused some changes, of course.
Yeah, well, when I was born, the only effect I had was what I read. You see, because from 1865 to 1891, that's a pretty long time. And this will show how the schools were working toward quality and equality and quality.
Okay, when you were an educator, I've heard that there was a white school and a black school.
Yes.
Now, what role did you play in allowing the black children to get an equal education as the white children did?
Well, I tried to get them not to have hold any prejudice themselves. But of course, that's a hard thing to do, because a whole lots of our folks who were prejudiced toward the whites, and the whites were toward the Negroes in a way. And I tried to get them to cultivate their minds and their hearts,
It's very
and not try to retaliate because their parents had been slaves.
Who do you think the people who most influenced you? The people who most influenced you?
Yeah.
Who are those people? Could you explain who?
Well, different ones that I worked for. As I said, one man became governor.
What was his name?
A.O. Stanley, Augustus Alfred Stanley.
And you worked for him in Henderson,
I worked
Kentucky.
for his wife, but most of the time he was in Washington or in the state capital of Kentucky, one or the other. But anyway, I worked for the family. And of course, later on, after had finished the early course, Hampton was not a college. But if you finish the first thing, I got an agricultural certificate that I worked on the farm in 1912. The next year, I got a normal diploma. And that is as far as Hampton was going then. But 8 years after that, Hampton had become a college. I got a scholarship to go back and finish for a Bachelor of Science degree in 1924. And what happened in 1924?
In 1924, did you say you came to Goldsboro?
I came to Goldsboro. And here I've been ever since.
Okay, could you name for me some of your achievements?
Well, I organized the District Teachers Association. I was president of the state.
What's that? Can you explain what a District of Teachers Association is?
Yes, I was president of the. I organized the districts before I became president.
What was this? Could you explain the organization? Could you explain the organization of the what was this district that you helped organize?
Well, there were certain counties. The state was divided into 4 districts. We were in the Coastal Plains district.
Yes.
And I can't think of the others now, but they all were named. I think one was the Mountain District. And then I became president for the State Teachers Association, and they didn't call it colored, but it was colored. But now it's all together.
Well, what year did you become president of the District Teachers Association?
1948. That's the year my wife died. I remember that.
What was your wife's name?
Alice Louise Harper. She was a Harper from Louisville, Kentucky. Her pictures in that book.
Really? Yeah. Where did you two meet? Where did you two meet?
Where did we meet? Well, we met in Little Rock, Arkansas. To tell you the truth, she was in the YWCA, Young Women's Christian Association, at the time, and working with so it's in the early part of the book.
Okay. Am I getting closer to it?
It's somewhere. That is right there.
She's a very pretty lady.
Thank you. Yes, she was a wonderful woman. Wonderful woman, yeah.
You're remarried now?
Yes, indeed. My wife was a home agent here in Goldsboro. Her name is Elizabeth Bright. She was a home agent of Wayne County. And yes, she's out right this minute. Something with Mrs. Howell, I don't know exactly what it is, something connected with the church.
So you attend First African Baptist Church?
That's right. It's the church burned. It's on Pine Street, and the church burned some years back, and we built up on Harris Street.
Well, what church did you attend when you lived in Henderson, Kentucky?
First Baptist.
Names are kind of similar.
Yeah, that's right. Yes, and my sister is right there now. Every now and then I send a column that I have written for the Goldsboro News Office called Browsing. Did you ever see the Goldsboro News Office?
What's the column called? What is the column called?
Well, it's called Browsing, but I've stopped that now. I retired from it. But every now and then I write something.
Well, what was this column in the News Argus? Was this church related, or it's just general information?
It was called Browsing because I was going around the state trying to sell that book and the first book I wrote.
Mm-hmm.
And Mr. Bell, who was the editor at the time, said, call it browsing. The articles I was writing said, call it browsing. So I wrote it once a week.
Mm-hmm. And what, could you explain some of the things some of the information you put into this column?
Well, I always have a text, something out of the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
And I write about most anything, for instance, like my Negro Black History and the Hampton Commencement that I attend nearly every year. I don't now because I can't get around.
I understand. What was the name of your first book?
A History of Negro Education.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have any of them except the copy that I kept for myself.
Yeah.
I sold them all. This book I didn't sell them all. This followed the other one.
So do you think education for young black children and white children are very important?
Do I think that education?
You think education, I mean, what advice could you give for young black aspiring children and white children who are trying to grow up, because education has changed so much?
Yeah, well, to keep their hearts together and not to hate, but to love one another, and not be prejudiced. And of course, I try to get my children that came under my jurisdiction to develop their minds and their hearts and their hands.
Yes.
Their heart, their hand, and their mind. And not be spiteful or antagonistic, even though sometimes they had to fight against it.
Yeah. Let's see. I have a question. I'm trying to think of it. Oh, how do you see education now has changed? I think you can see the change of how education today has changed from how it was. How do you explain this change? Or what do you think of the change in education? Do you think it's better, or do you think it could be improved?
Well, I think it's better. I think it's better. Of course, a lot of people think that things are worse, but I'm more optimistic. I think things are better. And
you don't think it could be improved in any way?
Well, certainly they have improved.
Do you think it could be improved from now? Do you think it could be improved anymore?
Well, yes, because we don't know now what's going to happen next year. We didn't know that we were going to have that disaster that had happened with the shuttle. What was the name of the
space shuttle?
The space. It had some other name, but I can't call it. But at any rate, I think things are better, and they'll still get better. My wife and I kind of disagree on that. And she's a great student of Revelation in the Bible.
Yes.
And of course, there are lots of things in the Bible that Daniel even spoke about. You know, way back there in the days when there was the Hebrew children in the fiery furnace. Well, that's not happening today. In my time, lynching was done, but lynching is you don't hear about anybody being lynched today.
No, I hope not.
Well, no, I hope not too. Yeah. I think things they're bound to get better because Jesus Christ is coming back. Would you agree? Would you agree that things are getting better?
Yes, I mean, as a student now, I think that the children today are offered a lot more than they were then.
Yeah.
And I think that as technology advances, we'll be offered even more.
Yeah.
I like to go back and concentrate more on your childhood a little bit more. Is that all right?
How's that now?
I like to go back and concentrate on your childhood a little bit more.
My childhood? All right, if I can remember.
Okay, there's some general topics I have here about, this might be kind of trivial, but like your food and food preparation. I mean, what kind of food did you eat back then?
What kind of
Food.
food?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yes. Well, to my best recollection, cornbread. It taught me to get my wife to cook. She wants to buy the bread. Cabbage, we raised. We raised as much of our food as possible could, sweet potatoes.
So you grew a lot of your food.
Yes. My father was a farmer. He would work all day on his garden, and then get a few nights sleep. And at 12 o'clock, he had to go to the brickyard. This is in the summertime and fall to fire the brick kilns.
Did your father or your mother, did they work? Did they work the farm for anyone?
No, he worked for himself.
So he owned his farm.
Yeah, and raised tobacco and food.
Mm-hmm.
And then in the wintertime, he worked in the tobacco factory.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. As far as food is concerned, we never went hungry. We didn't have any fancy foods.
Mm-hmm. So you never really heard of anything like eating out at McDonald's or anything like that?
No, indeed. No, we never. I never went to a restaurant until I was a grown man, I guess, until I became to go to work.
Mm-hmm. Your clothes, how did you get your clothes? Was there a shopping, like little general store or something that you went to?
Some of the clothes were hand-me-down, so to speak. Mm-hmm. Something that my older brothers had outgrown. And some of them, I wasn't able to buy anything like a good clothes until I was on my way to Hampton. I had worked for a department store, and I would pay on through the clothing that I paid. I worked for $4 a week, and so you could get us through the clothes. Well, I don't know, of course, the prices are not anything like what they are today.
Yes.
Yeah. But my mother made my sister's clothes. Mostly, she had a sewing machine, single sewing machine. She sewed and washed and ironed our clothes.
Well, what were some of the hobbies that you enjoyed doing when you were younger?
Oh, playing ball on a vacant lot. Because I said if we could find a ball, we had a ball. Nothing else. But, we had to work most of the time. Most of the time, I worked or looking for work.
Well, when you went to college, did you know any prominent people then when you went to Hampton Institute?
No, I didn't. I did. My brother had graduated and he was teaching in Florida. He finished in 1906. I went there in 1908. But there was nobody there then that I knew. I know there was a man that ran a building loan in Hampton from Henderson, and his brother was a teacher, a principal of a private school and a night school.
So you've always been interested in education. You've always been interested in education.
Well, yes. Yeah.
Well, how do you feel about Goldsboro, Wayne County today? I mean, you have a park named after you. I mean, how do you feel about young people today? Not advice, but how do you feel about them in the society? They recognize you as a very prominent citizen. How do you feel about that? I mean, having a park named after you, and various books written about, about you're going to be in our history books.
Yeah, well, I appreciate the honor that they have named us. street or lane and the park after me, and I didn't ask that, but I appreciate it. I appreciate allowing us to change the name of the high school from Colored to Dillard. See that, because he had been just about what I came as a supervising.
Like a superintendent.
Yeah, yeah. I think, wish, hope that the county and city will someday merge instead of having two
separate school systems.
But of course, the county people don't seem to, the county commissioners don't seem to
agree to
that.
that. So do you think that'll help the young people as a whole if the two school systems merge?
Yes, I think so, and I think it'll be more economically sound for the taxpayers in both city and county. And now, at one time, you paid your Goldsboro taxes in Goldsboro. But that merged, you pay the Goldsboro taxes when you pay your county taxes. It's all one.
So they just might as well just merge together.
Yes.
Okay, your book is called E-Qual-ity Education, North Carolina Among Negroes. How long did it take you to write this book, and what meaning does it have to you?
The copyright is listed in there somewhere, but I was working on it, I guess, 2 or 3 years while I was selling the other one, the first one.
Yeah.
I was working on that. See, now I retired in 58 with the new Dillard on Delro Street.
Yeah, that's a really nice.
Mr. Shipman succeeded me. During the year, I was working on the first book. Now, he asked me if I would hold the job until he could go back and finish his doctorate. I said, well, I'll go back for a year. I said, but of course I'm working on something else. And I did go back another year, just 1 year. He didn't come back at all. I mean, he got a better job because he ended up as president of Livingstone College. And of course, Mr. Wooten, John Henry Wooten, was principal in the Dillard and Goldsboro High merge. And so, but now they call it middle school. Well, but they put the word Dillard back on now. So just Dillard School.
Well, what does this book have? What kind of meaning does it have to you?
What's that?
What kind of meaning does this book have to you? E-Qual-ity Education, North Carolina Among Negroes.
You said what?
What meaning does this have to you?
What does this?
No, what meaning? What does the book mean to you?
This book? Well, it's a history, it's the truth, because I've got the information which is listed at the foot of nearly every page from the state archive. I went to all the daily, and also I went to some of the normal schools and see what historical facts they had. Elizabeth City, Winston-Salem, A&T, what's the other? Fayetteville. Now, there were a number of normal schools that are listed in there that were no longer in existence when I wrote that book.
Now, your titles, you're known as Professor H.V. Brown. The title Professor, did you gain that as you were teaching at the colored high school?
Well, that's the funny thing, but when a Negro became a principal of a school, the white people would call him Professor. And from the first of my teaching in Harrisonburg, Virginia, They called me Professor Brown, and it stuck.
Could you explain what you did in Harrisburg, Virginia? Harrisonburg, Virginia.
Well, I was a principal of an elementary school. Wasn't in high school then.
How long were you a principal there?
2 years.
Okay. Well, I think this about ends the interview. Is there anything you'd like to say, or anything else you'd like to?
Well, I don't know. I was president of the Hampton Alumni for 2 years. I was on the board of the trustees for 8 years. And they said that I had not missed a single meeting.
That's really good.
That's what they wrote when they gave me a citation.
So you've had a lot of awards.
Oh yes, I was just full of plaques, cups and so forth.
Could you, before we end, could you tell me where some of these awards are from?
Different classes, and the state chapter, and the national award. That's about it.
Well, is there, trying to think of something that. See, you're such a famous person. I mean, I've heard about you, but I've never met you. And it's really an honor to meet you. And I just wanted to know, the only advice you can give is just for young people to keep striving in the effort to obtain their education.
Well, I try to do that. I'm trying to see if I have down there talking about the influence of the churches. That was great. Most of the schools right after the Civil War were founded by some church.
So the church during the war, or when you were younger, was the center of strength for the family. The church was the strength of the family, for black family. The church.
The church. Now say that again.
During the war, the church served as a kind of like a foundation of strength and perseverance in the family. Yeah.
Well, if I understand you, most of the schools that existed were founded by some church, whether it's Baptist or Methodist, Presbyterian, like Johnson C. Smith, that is called Beulah University, that was founded by the Presbyterian church. The Jeans and Slater funds, they're Jeans, that was a woman, she was wealthy, and Slater, the most, I think they owned the New England mills. But, and Rosenwald, I believe I mentioned that. They coordinated with the churches in building the schools or paying the teachers at least, and helping to find teachers. And normal was the word used for a person who been trained to teach, called normal. Elizabeth City normal, and Winston-Salem normal. And A&T was sort of like Hampton. It was mostly for trade, agriculture and technical. At A for agriculture, and the T for technical. And of course, in a way, it's still that. But now, of course, all those schools belong to the state.
Well, is there anything else you'd like to say?
Well, no, I don't do so. I can think about cover everything I have in my notes.
Anything you have, anything extra, you can just anything like say. I'm sure a lot of people like to know.
Well, I don't think of anything else. I think I covered everything that I try to answer the questions for myself.
Yeah, that helps. Well, I'd just like to tell you that it was really nice talking to you.
Thank you.
And you're a very prominent citizen. I'm glad I got a chance to meet you.
Thank you.
This ends the interview with Professor H.V. Brown.